Well, today we're joined by someone who has been at the forefront of shaping U.S. foreign policy in some of the most critical moments in recent history. He served as director of the CIA and later as the 70th U.S. Secretary of State under President Donald Trump, where he played a leading role in confronting global challenges from China to Iran, negotiating historic peace agreements, and standing firm for religious freedom around the world. He's a staunch advocate for American values and principles, both at home and abroad, and continues to be a powerful voice on national security and foreign policy issues. Please welcome former U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, always great to see you.
Tony, wonderful to be with you again.
We were just talking with Ambassador Friedman. 4 years ago, the historic Abraham Accords were negotiated. It looked like the Middle East was on a pathway to peace. Now it's in flames. What happened?
Tony, the Biden administration made the fundamental mistake of returning to the policies of the Obama administration. At the center of that is misunderstanding the entire region. They forget the centrality of Israel to America, to our founding, to our Judeo-Christian values. They forget that it is the rightful homeland of the Jewish people and that they are under attack from the Iranians. And that leads to the second point they misunderstand, which is, of course, that the heart of the problem in the Middle East sits in one place. It sits in Tehran. All these other things that we read and hear about and watch on the news, whether it's the missiles from Hezbollah this morning, 150, whether it's the attack that's almost a year on now, 50 weeks ago, today on October 7th in Gaza, whether it's the Houthi missiles that are threatening Americans in spite of the fact that Vice President Harris says we don't have any soldiers in combat zones. We've got sailors out in the Red Sea. All of those are symptoms of Iran. And this administration got that fundamentally wrong. They gave the Iranians a ton of money, and they are using that money to inflict horrors and terror on the entire region.
Why do they get it wrong? Why does the left get it wrong? Do they not understand the foundational elements of what is driving the decisions that are being made in the Middle East?
Oh, goodness. I think there's three things. First, I think they don't understand that America is a good and decent nation. And so they're constantly out apologizing for us and our friends, apologizing for Israel's efforts to defend themselves, apologizing for our use of our power to shape a world influence, going to the United Nations and suggesting somehow that there's moral equivalence between what the Israelis are doing and what Hamas did. So I think that's the foundation of it. Second, they've got this theory of the case that there's such a thing as an Iranian moderate. And they talk about this all the time. There are no Iranian moderates. There's no one to talk to. There is no capacity to negotiate with terrorists of a kleptocratic state that are controlled by their external terror force, the IRGC. You have to demonstrate power, and the left doesn't like that. And then finally, they're beholden to the pro-Hamas wing of their party, the pro-terror, anti-Semitic wing of their party. These aren't just civilians at universities. These are members of Congress who are actively working to undermine the capacity of Israel to defend its sovereignty. And so those three things build to a Democrat Party that lost deterrence, put Israel in a horrible place, and more broadly, you were speaking with Ambassador Friedman, put our Gulf state Arab allies, they're Muslim nations, our Gulf state Arab allies in a place where they had to try and hedge their bets because they could no longer have confidence that the United States would be there for them if Iran continued to attack their countries as well.
Yeah, and they fail to understand that there's good and evil. And this is a battle between good and evil. I want to, you were graduate of West Point, tank commander, CIA director. The very sophisticated attacks that took place this week, which Israel has not confirmed nor denied involvement in, but the pagers and walkie-talkies going off in the hands of Hezbollah terrorists. I mean, pretty creative and effective.
Pretty creative. Perhaps the manufacturer should issue a recall notice for the devices, Tony. Look, supply chain operations have a long history. Everyone's talking about Trojan horses. It's a good story, too, a true story as well. But the reality of the matter is this was a deeply planned, long time organized effort in a complex environment. And the fact that they were able, whoever it was that did this, was able to do this clandestinely and get these in the hands of the terrorists themselves and then detonate them nearly simultaneously all across the region was an incredibly good intelligence clandestine operation. And I must say, I have heard some say, oh my goodness, there were civilians that were killed. That may well be true. There may have been some civilians killed. Collateral damage in war is nearly inevitable. But my goodness, the number of civilians that will not perish as a result of those terrorists being dead and those terrorists now being afraid to carry around communications devices, the number of civilians, not just in Israel, but all throughout the Gulf, fewer Palestinians will die. This was a fundamentally moral, decent action, and I applaud whoever it was pulled this off.
You know, you and I both have a little history when it comes to terrorism. What I appreciate deeply about this is now the terrorists are being terrorized.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They are now living in fear. They will be less aggressive, and the world is safer as a direct result of this. And it was also, Tony, too, so targeted, so effective, right? It wasn't about launching missiles into civilian downtown centers in Beirut. It wasn't about bombing schools the way the bad guys do. No, the good guys get it right, and the Israelis have defended their nation with some of the most capable, decent, law of armed conflict compliant activities over the last year, since October 7th of last year, that has been known in modern warfare. I applaud them for this, and I hope the United States will continue to stand by them. Even if Vice President Harris were to be the next president, she has to allow Israel to do the necessary to get its civilians back in their homes in the north of the country and to make sure that October 7th never happens again.
I mean, they, again, you've got a long history yourself in this area, but they're some of the best in the world in terms of operating in the anti-terrorist world.
Yep, they're world-class partners, Tony. They're very capable. And when the United States works alongside of them, and we work alongside our Gulf Arab partners, we can push back against this terror from Iran, and we can create a model which will deliver more peace, more prosperity, agreements like the Abraham Accords, and we can build out a security architecture in the Middle East that is good for Gulf Arab states, the Israelis, and of course for the United States of America as well.
We're stronger and better together. Mr.
Amen.
Secretary, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us for This Week on the Hill.
Thank you, Tony. Bless you. Have a good day.